It's called Advanced Answering Techniques. So it is three professional people explaining to other people how to answer different questions, a multiple variety of questions. Advanced Answering Techniques.
Hello and welcome to Advanced Answering Techniques. This is a podcast in which we answer your questions. These are user or listener submitted questions. We try to give them, passable answers. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Josh. I have two co-hosts. What? You don't like these other two co-hosts who need to make sure that they keep their mouths shut for just a second longer? They're kind of looking at each other like, why are you saying passable answers? Is the feeling that I'm getting. We'll find out if that's true, but I have some additional questions for them. One of the co-hosts' name is Caleb. Caleb, you meet an old crone in the woods, and she starts asking you questions about where you were at 4 p.m. on Monday. Do you share your whereabouts with her?
Yes.
Okay. And can we get some insight as
Any
to
specifics?
Why? Yeah.
Or why I share them?
Yeah.
Well, I just don't see what the threat is.
Okay.
It's just an old crone just kind of asking me about what I'm doing, what I did last Monday at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
And I have nothing to hide.
I see. Yeah. So a clean conscience.
Yeah. All I'm doing is stocking the frog pond not on my property.
Right.
It's on public land.
Yeah.
That my sons would like to catch frogs at, and there's haven't been frogs there.
Yeah.
So I stock it. We usually go at dusk, so I went at 4, released a bunch of frogs.
Yeah.
So then they can have a record day.
You went at 4 to be well in advance of dusk.
Yeah.
Just to make sure.
Well, that's when I had time.
Yeah.
That's when I had time. I mean, not right at dusk.
Right.
When we go, it's dusking.
That's fine. And just to kind of go back a little bit, fairy tale logic does say whatever the old crone's asking for, you should share with her.
Yeah.
It's never a good idea to not share, right?
Yeah.
With the old crone or the old man in the woods. It's always there's three brothers, ultimately 3 brothers, and the first 2 go out and they don't share. And then usually the third one does.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
I mean, I was just wondering if that was playing any kind of a role.
No.
Gabe. Gabe's our other co-host. Gabe.
Yeah.
Your record on whether or not you would eat gray rocks is still a little all over the place.
We've kind of had to convince him that he might.
It was initially. It was an old crone offers you gray rocks, and you said, no, you're not going to eat them. And then last time, after kind of an uncomfortable interaction with an old crone, it sounded like you would eat gray rocks. So I'm just curious as to whether or not you can kind of put the question to bed. Would you eat gray rocks?
There's no other information in the context.
It's not. This is not. It's not really context specific. I feel like if I go, would you eat pizza, or would you eat hamburgers?
Yeah.
Would you eat? But yeah.
Why?
Would you eat?
Like would I eat gray rocks?
You go to a barbecue.
Would you eat?
You go to a barbecue, okay, and someone's at the grill. There's hamburgers.
Right. An old
hot
crone.
dogs.
It's an old crone at the grill.
Wow, okay.
Kiss the crone apron.
Yes. She's cooking up. And there's a couple gray rocks right on the grill, too.
Why?
Right?
To see if they'll explode?
No. Because it's good. They're better warm. They're better hot.
There's.
Is that the problem? Is that we haven't said? Is that the problem?
Are they seasoned?
These are not cold gray rocks.
Are they marinated?
These are seasoned. You don't marinate a rock. That's crazy.
That seems like the best way to season a rock. I don't know. Rocks can be are porous.
Yeah.
It might soak actually,
But
more
these
than
are-
a dry rub.
Well, I don't know if it-
You don't marinate a hot dog.
Not a gray rock.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. A black rock, maybe.
I'm not going to eat gray rocks. And
Okay,
I don't
so-
understand why this is
Okay, interesting.
something
Okay,
that keeps coming
just
up. It
just
seems-
last time it was yes I would, and now this time it's like no I won't. I'm
Yeah.
not going to eat gray
Yeah,
rock.
I know. I'm not. I'm.
And in
I-
it, yeah.
He
I-
prefers them raw.
again,
I guess.
there's more context that was provided, I guess, at a barbecue. That situation, I'm not going to feel, especially if there's hamburger and hot dog
Yeah.
right next to the.
Oh, there's
right
a
next to
ton
rock.
of gray rocks left
Yeah,
over too.
yeah.
There's like a bunch of gray rocks.
It seems like
Yeah,
hardly
that's not-
anyone is touching these gray rocks.
Yeah,
even
and so-
though they're hot
okay,
off the grill.
Go ask them. Go ask those people. Why are they eating the?
They're
gray
not
rocks?
here.
Okay, yeah, but I'm at the.
They're not
okay,
here.
but you're at the barbecue, Caleb. What do you?
I
What do you?
know,
eat?
I-
Yeah,
said
no.
nothing about
Caleb
that.
answered his question.
Josh, you haven't answered one. Josh, you're at the barbecue. Do you eat the gray rock?
They're not. I am not interested in gray rocks. I'm probably not
How
going
about
to eat
this?
the gray rock.
How about we split a
But-
gray rock?
split one?
Yeah, you and I.
I don't. Hold on. I don't. Why am I suddenly getting pulled
Yeah,
into this?
Gabe,
great
this
question.
is unfair.
Why do I-
This is unfair, Gabe. Josh,
Yeah.
Josh is not at this barbecue. You chose to go to the Old Crone's barbecue.
I was
Okay,
invited.
we-
I wanted to. I didn't want to curse or something.
Right, and we aren't there.
We aren't there. I don't know. I don't know why I would have to answer it. It's up to you. Do you or don't you? It sounds like you wouldn't eat the gray rocks.
When I say that I won't eat gray rocks,
Right.
you guys are like, why not? You should eat. You're really making it sound like I should eat the gray rocks. And I know
I'm
we're
just-
adults, but you guys are my older brothers. It totally has an impact on how this whole thing shakes out.
You think we're trying to pressure you
I
into
think
eating gray
maybe
rocks?
a little bit, yeah. And I don't think that's
Don't you think that we care about you and want the best for you?
sometimes. Sometimes I think that.
Let this be one
think,
of those times.
yeah.
Let this be one of those
Well, and we're
times.
just asking. I don't think I have a vested interest in
Yeah.
whether or not you eat the gray rock.
I would-
I'm just trying to get to the bottom of the question.
Of why
I would-
not?
I
Why
would
won't you
disagree.
eat them?
No.
Why won't you eat them?
I mean, if there's hamburger and hot dog, I'm gonna have those. That's why.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, part of me feels like there is something ultimately reasonable in just not eating them. They're not edible.
Right.
Yeah, and like I think one of the reasons why there are so many leftovers is that the old crone invited you and all the dentists she knew,
Yeah.
and so it does make sense,
Yeah.
just like maybe is this it, Gabe? You feel like you would get in trouble with your dentist if you ate one of these
I
gray
think so.
rocks?
I mean, it's not surprising that dentists won't do it, but if maybe now the dentists are like, I'm going to try to get some of my clients invited to this barbecue.
Yeah.
Oh,
I see a big
Yeah.
payday coming my
Hey,
way.
future
Yeah.
future customer.
Yeah, and then I'm going to let my my gastroenterologist friend know that there are some people who have been trying to eat gray rocks, trying to pass gray rocks through their
Right.
digestive
Digestive
tract.
well, you
tracts.
better chew them up. Don't just swallow them whole.
Right.
Enjoy the gray rock.
But how
Savor them.
how many rocks can you have before? Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Again,
know.
I'm not trying to say that they are edible, that anyone should be eating. I was just curious.
But like the
Yeah.
crone is, she's regularly offering them like their food.
no, she didn't even. That was my question initially.
Yeah, was
just like she wasn't. She just gave you. She was offering you gray rocks. My question was, would you eat them? She wasn't saying.
She never said anything about eating them. She was
Okay.
just giving them
All
to
right,
you.
That's just me being curious, I guess.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not going to eat gray rocks.
Okay. I think that's fine.
And the reason why you're not going to
Because
is
they're not edible.
Okay, perfect.
I feel like that's a good answer. I feel like my curiosity is sort of sated. there.
Good.
And we can move on to the next thing, which is we have Spotify comments.
Spotlightify.
Spotlightify comments. I'd like to spotlightify these comments. Yeah. Go ahead. If you just a quick jingle, kind of a.
What's the sound of a
sting.
spotlight?
Yeah, no,
I don't know. It's
it
like
is. No, I think you're right.
burning
Isn't there
something.
like I'm thinking
It's like a gas.
more like when they turn on those.
Here, let's start it. Let's start the
when
spotlight.
they turn on like one, not necessarily a spotlight, but like at a movie premiere where they've got the what are those called?
Spotlights.
Are those spotlights?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. But there's like a ka-tunk.
Yeah.
Or this. It's like
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of like there's a boat.
Yeah.
Okay.
The sound of
Yeah.
a light.
The power went out. We're running the lights on generators.
no, that's the
Oh.
light. The light is
The light.
gas powered.
It's
The light
gas-powered
is
light.
just gas powered. I don't know why that seems like a bad idea to have the light like like filament heat
Right
producing
next to.
connected like plugged into a gas tank basically. It seems
Wow,
bad.
this one's it's getting a little overheated. Maybe it's running at capacity.
What's happening? Why?
The light's getting brighter.
I
and brighter.
guess I don't know. Is somebody adjusting the intensity
Yeah.
of the light, or is it just yeah? Does it require more energy if the
What's
thing-
interesting is how often the sound has to stop in the middle of. There's some kind of hiccup there. That's probably just a carburetor kind of problem.
Check this one out. Guess what this one is?
It's a strobe light.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spotlightify comments. Joy says once again, and this was on the last episode, which was Joy asking a couple questions. Once again, you all prove you can answer my question no matter how dumbly convoluted. Also, I did comment on your last episode, which is true, but the problem is that we had already recorded.
In the last episode, we recorded
Yeah,
before
Yep.
we had these comments had been posted.
yeah.
So we'd missed last week talking about the week before's
Right.
Spotlightify.
If you've ever seen the pre-taped call-in show,
Yeah.
sketch by Mr. Show, that's
Yeah.
it's kind of that situation.
Yeah, a little bit. It's
so,
just not as funny or anything.
And honestly, if you haven't seen that, it is like that situation too.
especially if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
That's true.
So going back, digging a little deeper here, for the previous episode, Joy says, my apologies for not mentioning Caleb being missed in the last episode. That's going back even further. But for this was Justin's surprise episode, surprise and TED Talks. She says, this was an epic episode. Hope Justin's wife is pleasantly surprised. Speaking as a wife, surprises that involve making more money are always great.
Okay, well, there you go. I would not say that that's necessarily how he framed it. He did make it clear that, you know, it was going to replace what he had been making at his other job. But
Yeah.
so we
Yeah.
appreciate your feedback.
Doesn't
Joy.
make sense though. I mean, as future episodes will shine out. Shine out?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
The wives like for the men to have money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Previous Yeah. That's
After
getting
all the-
pretty tricky. But
After all
yes.
the dust shines out.
Yeah.
Julie says about last episode, Joy's episode, this is my kid's favorite episode. There are so many sounds around our place now. Thanks for that. FYI. Oh, yeah, I also did leave a comment on the last episode.
Okay, all right.
And then she said, oh, also, I'm very impressed with your knowledge of Destiny's Child.
What?
I was the only, I guess that's just for me. I was the only one who
You
displayed.
knew that Beyonce was in Destiny's Child?
No, I said, say my name, say my name. Is
Oh,
Destiny's
I
Child.
see.
yeah.
Yes. I don't know any Destiny Child songs.
I can't say I do either.
Yeah, I think that's the only one I know. And then going back
To the left is just Beyonce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then going back to actually, I don't know. Is that right?
It's a great question.
I think it.
We'll have to ask. Well, it's Julie. Get at us in
yeah.
the Spotlightify section.
Yeah, let us know so that next episode. Yeah. Julie then on the previous episode said, and this was about the TED Talk specifically. I want to say my little sister could do a TED Talk about annoying her older sisters. She'll have to give you guys some notes. For example, pretending to have rabies. Works every time.
That's good.
That is good.
It is good. That was you did leave you did kind of miss a spot.
I missed that one. That reminds me of another thing, which is pretend to be possessed by the devil.
Yeah, that was Caleb's.
Yeah,
That's something that you can do.
Yeah, I feel like you were primarily annoying your mother with that one.
Yeah.
It wasn't really pretending.
It wasn't
was
older
claiming,
sisters.
Claiming demon possession, and blaming your, misbehaving or lack of.
I think it was that you couldn't walk because
you couldn't go clean your room or something.
It was the hallway.
Yeah.
I couldn't clean the hallway. I
Okay,
couldn't
clean
actually
the
take
hallway.
the things from downstairs upstairs because the devil was actually keeping me from doing that.
Yeah.
Because that was, I guess it was a pretty light day for evil.
Yep.
Or like a light day.
Yeah,
Like,
dedicate one of the primary imps.
Mm-hmm.
Seems unlikely. It was the 90s, so
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
things are going on.
Yeah, there was. I mean, Marilyn Manson was certainly
Oh, yeah.
attracting a lot.
Maybe
of
it was like, they're kind
demonic attention.
of, people are kind of just doing it themselves, so I don't have to do as much.
It kind of.
So I'll go make this kid not do half of his chore.
Yeah. Or it's like they got something big planned. It's like, I know it wasn't September 10th, 2001 when you were doing that, but it was like, we got something big going on tomorrow. Let's take it
Let's
easy
take
today.
it easy today. Let's take it easy. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not. I
Yeah.
mean, they're not ethical creatures, and that extends to their work ethic.
True.
I wish they were more lazy.
If only. Guys, this has been fun, but I think it's time for us to actually get to our question. This question, well, you'll see that it kind of refers to a question from an episode going all the way back to April 8th. I believe it was episode 77. This is going to be 86.
Oh, wow.
So, by the way, 8642, huh?
42?
47.
Yeah.
I prefer, just as a number, I prefer 42.
Well, sure. The Douglas Adams of it all,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. But I think we should.
Josh is making an appeal for nihilism of some
Wait,
kind.
what is
I'm making-
8647? What does that even mean?
That it was Comey was trying to tell people that we needed to get rid of President 47.
Oh, I see.
86.
See, I have been so out of the loop.
Thank God.
Awesome.
Yeah. Just don't even know what that means.
But so hold on. Who would 40? Sorry, we don't really
42.
need to spend time on
We
this.
spend a lot of time
Yeah.
going back for
Presidents.
president.
Who
Would
is
it be
the 42nd president?
Herbert Walker?
I feel like it is.
That
'cause
sounds right.
We've got 45. So 44 is Obama. 43 is
Bush.
so it's Clinton.
Okay, Clinton.
Clinton.
Yeah, he should probably get 86th.
Yeah, 8642. I mean, we just
Sure.
do it now.
Yeah. Is he 86 yet?
No,
No.
I don't think so. Let's listen to this questioner will indicate his name, so we'll let him introduce himself.
This is Sheriff Deputy Cornwall from the Boundary County Sheriff's Department. We got a report up here of an explosion in the Selkirks in the foothills. A bunch of folks go hiking up there and whatnot. So we send a couple of deputies up there, and they find the remains of an Ethan Rogers. Now, Ethan Rogers obviously died from this explosion, but we had determined that he had been attacked by a cougar before this explosion. And we got a tip from a ham radio enthusiast up here that he heard a broadcast with coordinates that happened to be the same coordinates that the remains were found, and someone calling for some type of artillery strike. And we did happen to find a shell from Flak 88, which is a old German round used in World War II. Now, nobody ever reported on him missing person. Ethan obviously didn't have any loved ones. But we did receive an anonymous tip that somebody had called in to your show claiming to be this Ethan. Now, how is it that this man is killed by an old obsolete German round from World War II in North Idaho, and he calls you guys right before? Any information you guys could give me would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so you guys heard it right there. Apparently, sadly, an Ethan Rogers died up in the I guess the foothills of the Selkirks, and
That's what we're being led to believe.
yeah, and so that's too bad.
That's awful.
And I mean, we remember the call that we
Right.
got.
Yeah.
The message.
Yeah.
Was about a cougar, or he was asking a different. He was going to ask a different question.
Yes.
And then he was attacked in the course of asking the question.
The insane coincidence
Yeah.
is that the very advice that I gave is advice that he was already implementing somehow.
Well, so
Like, 'cause-
I was just thinking that through. I was wondering if that's what
Right.
happened, or if it was a situation where, because of course, I think as we mentioned in that episode, we were answering much later,
Yeah.
like a long time after.
Yeah.
But I wonder if he was just kind of staying put in the Selkirks, waiting for us to
Waiting.
answer.
Okay.
And then once we answered, then finally he put our advice into practice.
Because
He
the
crawled back to town and found an old-timey, like Coca bottled glass
Right.
radio operator.
well, no, I
And
think
then
we
crawled back to the same spot.
I think we did. I think we did indicate that they do send those with you. Those
Oh,
guys,
right.
the radio operators.
Yes. No, you're right.
The
He would have already been there.
parks
he was
rangers.
he would have been with them.
So he just, really the only advice we gave was use the guy that's already there with you to call it an artillery strike on,
On
yourself,
your
your
own
position. Yeah. Yeah.
That
I-
was the advice provided for those that it was. He asked what to do. What do I do now that
Yeah.
I've been attacked by a cougar?
Yeah.
And Caleb's recommendation was to call in an artillery strike on your position
Yeah.
to try to deal with the
Which
cougar.
and there's a couple questions about I have some questions about how they landed on some of this information, which is they knew that it was Ethan Rogers.
right.
I am really curious how they figured that out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, that they knew that he had been attacked before even listening to the message. They knew that he had been attacked by a cougar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious as to how they knew those things if he did actually get an artillery strike right on his position.
Yeah.
The remains,
Yeah.
Well,
I think you can. Those are also things that you can piece together once you know that once somebody has heard.
yeah.
Apparently, a ham operator heard him give his coordinates
Right.
and call in the strike.
Right. Right. Because of a cougar.
Because
Why
of
am
a
I doing this
cougar.
Yeah.
cougar? Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
then.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe information like that, but maybe then as maybe he said something about the podcast, they were able to
Yeah.
listen to the podcast and get more context that way.
Yeah. There's.
I don't know. I'm just
You're right.
Look at cell phone records.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, if his cell phone was still around,
Yeah.
maybe a picture of the cougars on there or something.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a picture of the cougar on there. I was
Yeah.
thinking just like they were triangulating calls that they had records of them being placed. But
I'd
you're
want a
right.
picture.
But
I'd want a picture. I'd want a picture of the cougar.
And we
to be
don't
sure.
we don't know. Maybe he had lost enough blood and been injured enough by the cougar that the shell didn't actually hit him, but it hit nearby, and like the concussion was enough. Or something,
that's true. That's
you know,
true.
and then they can expect his.
Maybe
remains.
he did have remains.
Yeah.
More together remains. One other thing that's kind of troubling is there's no mention of the cougar being killed or anything. So potentially this is for nothing. There's no mention
Yeah.
of cougar remains
yeah.
or
I guess that's something that we overlooked in our initial advice.
Is that cougars are pretty agile.
Agile.
They can move
they can kind of dodge
Yeah.
quickly.
shrapnel.
Yeah. And I mean they have like real thick skin too. So
So,
shrapnel might not even
fair enough. I guess that there's some ways in which we could kind of take that on the chin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really, but it is also just a failure of the system, because the system that's in place
Yeah.
to prevent this kind of thing is
Not prevent.
when you're checking
not
to
prevent.
remedy this sort of
Right,
thing.
right.
Yeah.
Is when you check in with the park rangers before you go on your camping or hiking trip, they send along an old school radio operator.
Yep.
Name's probably like,
Who knows
Uh,
if he's used?
Yeah.
Most likely, he will be calling in an artillery strike on his position.
it's really just
they-
a suicide bomber type
Yeah.
thing.
They tend to be, kind of low-spirited people who maybe don't have a ton to live for, which apparently,
But-
also true of Ethan
But that's the system.
Rogers.
Yeah.
That is the system.
That's just the system we
That-
have. So we see here that it does. Some people fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
It's not a system that can prevent everybody from falling through the cracks. People are falling through the cracks. In some ways, might be somewhat of a broken system.
I think so. And they're like, the advice maybe should have been like, don't use this system.
Right.
Like in the future, I think that is, look, we learned.
Right.
Let's learn from this. Let's not let Ethan Rogers sacrifice. And the
Yeah,
Coke bottle
right.
guy, wish we knew his name.
Yeah.
But we don't know his name.
Probably,
Just kind of radio.
it's probably like Wichita or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's-
Wichita's good.
Yeah.
It's likely.
Wichita and Ethan Rogers.
Mhm.
Let's not let their sacrifice be for nothing.
Yeah.
Let's arrange a hunting party to go find this cougar and kill
Right.
it, and maybe even sort of because I imagine there's maybe some kind of issue at the Selkirks now where people aren't wanting to go hike there as often, and maybe tourism is down,
Yeah.
and so people do want this. And I imagine it's a pretty big cougar
Yeah.
out there, and so maybe we should kind of rally a group of at least 3 guys
Okay.
to go out there, find maybe like a specialist in cougars,
Mm-hmm.
like the environment, like just the like the guy who's more scientific,
Right.
and then like the guy who's like hunted a lot of cougars.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then maybe
And
the
then, like
the guy who's
Maybe
the
Cornwall.
police chief. He
Yeah.
seems like Deputy Cornwall would be a good
we could get him
a
to
good
go there.
option there. Kind
Seems
of.
professional.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And boy, they're gonna need a bigger tent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Do you
Yeah,
do you
'cause-
think that since they're already the system that exists is
Yeah.
for them to send somebody like a man with you
Right.
who's got specialist training? Do you think it would make sense to just send like a cougar hunter?
Oh yeah,
Just
I
on
do.
it,
I
just-
do personally.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that
The
would make more
expense
sense.
also of operating like a full artillery regiment,
Yeah.
that could probably be split into. You could have 5 or 6 of these guys ready to go, fully armed.
The trick with some of these things is how closely regulated, national forest, state forest things are.
Yeah.
Is that actually changing
Yeah.
the fine
Yeah,
print?
that's true.
I mean,
it's
look at
really
on and the
complicated.
regulations on the. I think it's a good. I think it's a
Okay.
good idea.
I think it is.
I'm on board.
But
Okay.
but just to Josh's point, they're using obsolete German
Yeah.
shells.
Yeah.
Like I know that's an upstream issue, but like
Yeah.
the fact that they're doing that,
Yeah.
Maybe that's a cost saving,
sure,
effort.
but
It probably is, but it seems like a holdover from like FDR era,
right.
Okay.
New Deal.
I guess how did
Kind
we
of-
get? Did,
Okay,
did we
yeah.
confiscate those shells?
That's what I'm thinking. It
Yeah.
was.
Okay, we confiscated
And we're
the
like,
shells,
we
brought
can
them
use
back.
them.
We're
I
not
mean-
going to use them in our real wars,
Right.
but if we need to kill some cougars,
To the question though, I mean the officer is just asking us what how did this happen, I guess.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, well, you need to go ask the parks rangers. Like, we didn't shell
No, we
the
didn't, right?
position.
We-
No, I didn't.
I
do
did.
it.
No.
Okay.
I'm,
No.
but I guess as you're right. You're right. Clearly, there's a system in place, and the system has failed.
Yes.
Ethan Rogers.
Slip through the cracks.
But they're probably. I don't know that we need to feel that concerned. Ultimately, we're just giving advice.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we're not. I don't know if we can be held liable for
Yeah,
manslaughter or
His
any,
question
you know.
was just any other information we could give him regarding this incident that would help
Right.
him gain clarity would
Yeah.
be good, which is like, I don't know. It's kind of an open-ended question. The question kind of is not very good, if I'm being honest.
Well, sure. I mean, that's, yeah.
not
but
that this guy doesn't seem like he listens to it.
The trick-
show
No.
doesn't
no.
quite understand.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get some clarity.
I guess part of the trick is that, I agree, but it's not a good question. But maybe it's just kind of an entree. We should maybe be a little more careful about how we're talking about things, because
Yeah.
it might just be sort of a non-threatening question that's opening a door. We need to, I don't know, should we
walk through this door?
Should we walk through this door? Is it time for us to get a non-dog lawyer involved and to kind of help us craft a response? I don't know.
We could
I don't know what
actually-
kind of liability we're
We
exposing
could actually
ourselves to.
make this like the first podcast that there ever was, Serial. You guys remember that? The real,
Yes,
the
the
true
first,
crime,
the
original
absolute
podcast.
first podcast ever was Serial,
Yeah.
and we could actually do that. We could actually do our own Serial
Yeah.
now
Mhm.
with this case,
Yes.
finding out.
uncovering all
happened.
of the details.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like
It
pretty
seems-
much all of
I
it's out
think-
there, but the mystery is really kind of the mystery is what was the name of the radio operator?
Yeah.
That's one of the big ones. How could his glasses really be actually described as Coke bottle?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Right.
Or some of the open questions. Why didn't anyone like Ethan Rogers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's,
Who-
obviously he had no loved ones,
Yeah.
the officer said, which at first struck me as kind of odd. And then I remembered the call and everything. And it made
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah,
Kind of the tone of voice.
Yeah.
Mm,
That sort of thing. I guess I don't know. I don't know how close he and the radio operator got in the few hours they had together
yeah.
before they became intermingled through eternity.
And obviously, this is just goes
Or
back
chunks
to
of
the
them
whole
did.
system being kind of out of whack. But like, there is another guy there. That guy definitely could have helped Ethan. Just kind of like, just probably drug him,
Yeah.
not with drugs,
Like
Right.
dragged him,
Yeah.
Yeah,
picked him
and
up.
not like been negative about
Yeah,
him.
no,
and
no.
like shots fired.
No, well, yeah, unless at a
But
cougar,
well, okay, but he does call the shots to be fired.
right? But not.
So
What I'm
it's
saying is, if the
like moved him.
yeah, could have like
And not,
picked
like,
his body up.
emotionally or
Yeah, no, and not his bowels or anything like that. No. But like, went over and like picked his body up,
Okay.
and like while he's still alive, and then walked back to town and gotten medical attention.
Yeah, medical
that-
help, medical attention, just really anything, any kind of medical anything. would
Yeah.
have
You know,
been
sometimes-
preferable to what actually happened.
right, which is to be attacked by a cougar and then be blown up
Yeah.
by a shell.
by an now ancient
Mhm.
mortar round.
Yeah, basically.
Which German engineering still works,
Years
after,
after.
whatever, 70 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I know.
yeah, well,
we,
and
we,
not that we
we try to
you know,
sit here in judgment on so much of what was happening with the Germans at the time
Yeah,
and everything, but you gotta
Yeah, I mean,
it
yeah.
comes down
Yeah.
to just the longevity of some of their artillery. It's
the
impressive.
powder.
yeah. Yeah, it's certainly, it's the one bright spot we could take from this whole thing.
Yeah, Yeah.
Yep. The Germans seemed to know what they were doing.
Yeah.
With regards to the shells.
Right.
And
Yeah.
not where they were shooting them when they were doing it, but
Right.
just them making them. And not even the people probably who were being forced to make them, but
Right.
just in the basically just the instructions for how to make the shells.
Yeah.
That's what the Germans were
Yeah.
doing well.
And kind of an excellent kind of designing systems. I would say also their ability to design complex systems that made sure that, say, certain materials would make it to certain
Places.
destinations
Yes.
on time,
Yep.
Yes.
by
Yep.
rail.
And
Right.
and also like it's not a new question to ask. Like, what if the Germans had won the war?
No,
like
it's not.
people have
There's
asked
a
that
whole
question.
TV show about
exactly.
that, actually.
There's all
Pretty
sorts
interesting.
of terrible things that would have come about had that happened. However, I think we might have a better system for combating cougars in the Northwest here. Like, I think they might actually have a better. They might not even use the artillery.
Oh, you
They
mean
might
if
even have a better
if
system.
the Germans had won, then we might not
Yeah.
be using this
Yeah,
system.
and it's-
Maybe.
Yeah.
and it's not like national parks of America. It's like national parks of the Third Reich or whatever. But
Yeah.
they're
Right.
they
man.
are
You
in
think
charge
they have
of
national parks?
that. They might. I don't
I bet
know.
They were
would.
they're pretty nationalistic.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it
it's
feels
true.
like their parks
Yeah.
would.
It's
Probably
kind of
be-
true. Actually, probably what would have happened is all of the land would be kind of a national park,
Yeah.
or just a national something.
Yeah.
It
Sir,
would
I
not be any one individual person's.
No.
Yeah. And I
I
don't
mean,
know.
it would be one individual person.
Right, but sort of for the good of the nation.
Yeah.
Not like.
I mean, yeah, to
Yeah.
some degree. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's good.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I'm
like-
saying in their perspective.
Yeah. Totally. Yes. Yeah.
So I guess what we're learning is that for its imperfections, right? Even for all the ways that these sorts of systems fail us,
Right.
we do still have to be thankful that we have like the freedom that we enjoy. The fact that Ethan Rogers has the freedom to go on a hike, as the deputy said,
Yeah.
go hacking up there.
Go hacking.
Yeah, where is that guy from? He must have been
yeah.
transferred.
He's
I think he's maybe an army brat who lived several different places, got different
Yeah.
accents.
See, this is just another question that maybe if we did a serial type
Yeah.
Right.
podcast, we would be able
A
to
profile
uncover.
on Cornwall, or
Yeah.
is that what is
Yeah,
it?
it's Cornwall.
Yeah,
Cornwall?
Deputy Cornwall.
Yeah, but like, yeah, even though the systems do fail us, it's good that we have the freedom to go on a hike, and if we feel we're in danger, call in an artillery strike on our own position.
Thanks so much for listening to Advanced Answering Techniques. I've been your host, Josh. I'm always surprised by what I end up saying at this point.
It's usually something like that.
It's a little bit like I usually don't reintroduce myself for some reason
Yeah.
at the end of the podcast, but I usually do say something along the lines of, if you'd like us to treat your questions this way, send them in. You can send those to advancedansweringtechniques@gmail.com. We're looking for an audio file about a minute in length. Guys, how do you feel about our answer? We're kind of, in some ways, I guess, speaking on the record
Yeah.
here a little bit, answering Deputy Cornwall's question.
Yeah.
How do we feel?
I mean, I do feel that your introduction, Caleb, and I maybe made a face when you said that we give passable answers.
Right.
But now, after reflecting on all of this, I think that was even too generous.
Well, I honestly, I just wish I had more to offer. But it's kind
Okay.
of, I do think it's, I guess if we had some kind of behind the scenes interaction with Ethan Rogers, that I don't.
Yeah.
So I just have nothing to really offer besides rehashing that
Yeah.
old episode.
I guess that's true. There's, we probably, I don't know, it might be interesting if there was anybody, I feel like a Deputy Cornwall right now. If there's anybody who had information about Ethan Rogers, just maybe for us to, I don't know about doing like a whole podcast series, but maybe just to kind of remember him.
And like we need to know who the tipster was.
Yeah.
Right.
This ham radio operator.
The anonymous. Well, there was a ham operator, but then there's an anonymous tipster who listens to the podcast,
right? Who
then tipped off the sheriff. About it. But he's not one of Ethan Rogers' loved ones,
right?
So they must. I don't know who is that, and you don't have to reveal your identity to everyone. And if you tell us,
was it the cougar?
Could be the cougar. That would be. I'd like to know if we have cougars.
Okay. That can actually. I mean. Just, as somebody who has maybe badgered Gabe a little bit about whether or not he'd eat gray rocks.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily feel that I'm in a position to say, are we really sure that there's any reason to think that a cougar would be able to make a phone call?
Right.
But that is kind of how
I'm not saying all of them.
Yeah.
I'm saying maybe there's one cougar who can do this.
Yeah.
We're not saying all of the cougars can do this.
Interesting. So you're saying kind of out of a population of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands. How many cougars are there?
Yeah. Maybe
40.
there's one that
you think there's 40?
Yeah.
It seems less likely if there's only 40.
If there's only 40, then I think the cougars are still, they're not using
phones. But
you get to a bunch of cougars and probably one of them can use a phone.
Increase the sample size.
So it might be worth doing this podcast series. Because, I mean, if it's kind of tricky, because if we start it and we find out that this cougar can't use the phone, that would be really disappointing.
Yeah.
But if we start it and we find this cougar that can use a phone, then that's probably a podcast.
Isn't that interesting?
Box office.
That is.
That would be.
There is something about the documentary as a form is you don't know. You can hope.
Right.
That you might find something really compelling, really interesting, but I guess you just don't always
And
know.
I would just hope that we would have the integrity to not, like, fake it,
Right.
Like, fake a